Hullin. Okay, so we're recording, and we're in Hullin. We're discussing Kachal, and there's a Mishnah that you all have seen, I suppose, on Kuf Tet. And maybe Reuven, while you're here, why don't you read for us Mishnah here?
I'll try my best. All right, הכיכל קוראו מוציא את חלבו, לא קראו אינו עובר עליו. That's the first statement. הלב קוראו מוציא את דמו, לא קראו אינו עובר עליו. The Mishnah is basically talking about two different, I guess, parts of the animal. So the kichal, the udder. In order to be able to eat it, you have to rip it out and take out the milk. Now, if you didn't rip it up, you're not over. Why aren't you over? We just haven't figured it out yet. Now,
Right, exactly. It's sort of a strange.
Heart,
it's sort of it's the same din for the leiv. Eino over alav. In other words, so what is this Mishnah saying? If you're not over alav, why are you doing it? So it's like lechatchila din. Sounds like it's lechatchila din, right? Lechatchila, you should cut it and let this stuff out. But if you didn't, so eino over alav. Now the Gemara is going to immediately question what is this eino over alav? Let me just see. Okay. Actually, if you look at the Rashi, lo karo eino over alav, alachilato lilakot. You don't get whipped for eating it. It's a very strange Rashi. I don't know what he means. I think he means, because he says you don't get whipped for eating it, velo al bishulo, and not for cooking it. Why would you get whipped for eating it? I mean, eating it without cooking it? Well, it's a little bit strange to me what Rashi means. Eating the milk, why would it?
You don't get whipped for eating it, but maybe it's there's still no.
What possible isser would there be of eating the milk of the shechted animal?
Well, it's not the milk; it's eating the whole kichal together, right?
Or maybe he's talking about
milk,
maybe he's talking about the heart. Maybe he's talking about the heart there. I think he's talking about the heart. But then it goes on, talks about milk. Wait, so Joel, what do you want to say? Joel, you have an answer for me?
I want to say, I think he's trying to say that there's...
It's before the Rashi on the left.
What, Jessica? Is my internet not good?
I said it's before the Rashi on the left, so I think it must be... No, I think my internet's not good. It's before the Rashi on the left, so I think it has to be about the kachal, no?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's on the kachal, right. I agree. It's on the kachal. So yeah, why would you get whipped? Why would you even have a havamina to think there's a problem with milk of a?
Oh no, I think he means that if you cook it, you don't have a lav either for cooking it or for eating it, right?
Mm-hmm. When you've cooked it. Okay.
Yeah.
Velo al bishulo, and not on its cooking. You should have put the order differently. You should have
exactly. Yeah.
Bishul and then achila after the bishul. Then it would have made more sense. Why? Now he explains the lav halav mikri, because what's in the udder is not called milk. But the Gemara is going to question: is there an isur d'Rabbanan? So, it's not milk. That's the key point there. He's saying it's not called milk. All right. So go on, Reuven, in the Gemara.
All right. Amarav Zera Amarav, Eno over alav umutar. So Rav Zera says in the name of Rav makes it a statement that when it says Eno over alav, it means he's not over, it's also permitted to do so. V'ha anantnan Eno over alav, mi'avaru de lo avar ha'isurica, right? But we learn somewhere else that while you might not be over, there is still a hisur.
Right. Wait. What does it mean mutter? Mutter to do what? It's obviously you have to do karava. What's mutter?
Well, you might have thought that it's b'diavad, it's permitted, but he's saying mutar, it's lechatchila.
What's permitted?
Well, to eat it.
To eat it, yeah, right. In other words, it's not permitted not to do kriya. You have to do kriya. You have to rip it. But if you didn't do kriya, now it's permitted to eat it. Exactly. And then it goes on. Ha'anan tnan.
Right, Natnan, and over alav, Niavaru de Lavar, Haisuraika. Right, it's not over. However, there is still a Hisur.
In other words, we make a diuk. When it says "ein over alav," that just means "ein over alav," but not that there's an isser. If I tell you you don't get whipped for something, that doesn't mean it's permitted. It just means you don't get whipped for it. So go on.
Bedinhu de Surah Namidika. No, so the Gemara answer is that the din is that you don't even have an Isur. And the reason why we use the language is because we needed to teach the Seifa. What's the
What?
Seifa?
And now it brings the sefer, right?
הלב קורא ומוציא את דמו, לא קרא אינו עובר עליו. הטעם מעבר הוא דלא עבר, האיסור העיקר. Right, so in the case of the lev, מעבר הוא דלא עבר, he's not over Isur, but the Isur is still present.
Right. In other words, by the lathe, you do have an isser to eat it, even if you didn't take the blood out, because I guess of eating blood. But by
Right.
milk, you don't. It's also a little bit weird because well, why should there be an isser for blood more than there is for
Well,
milk and meat?
Rashi explained that at the beginning, the first Rashi of the Mishnah says the reason why it's not asur is because the lav chalav mikre. It's not called milk, right? So there is no isur of basar v'chalav in the udder, but in the case of the heart, you still have an isur of eating blood.
But what isser is it? What isser is it with the blood?
Well, you have an isur, you can't eat blood, right? You don't
But
allow-
but is it deraisa or derabanan?
Well, it's isur deraisa.
Deraisa.
Yeah, you're still isur deraisa.
So not really. There may be a certain
Well,
reading in the
there's-
Rambam like that, but no, in general, cooked. In other words, it's called dam ivarim. Blood inside of a piece of meat is only asur d'Rabbanan. If I don't salt my meat, that blood in Jessica is by Yikra is talking about the dam shchita, the blood that comes out when you shech the animal. That's an isur d'oraita. But blood in the flesh is only asur if you cook it d'Rabbanan. So, and if you eat it raw, it's not asur at all. Joel, you want to say something? No.
It is
Okay.
if you squeeze it out, right? If you squeeze it out while it's still raw, it's asur d'oraita, I think, right? I have to double check. I can't remember.
Yeah,
but-
I'm not sure. Oh, maybe there's an isser, but you certainly don't get punished in the same way as you get for the main isser is on the dam shchita. It's on the dam that comes out when the soul is lost.
You don't get punished anyway. You don't get punished anyway on blood that's in on that pasuk, do you? Because the whole thing in Ramban about lav shebeklalat. We were just learning this morning. It happens to be very fresh in my memory, but
Perhaps.
but it says
I mean,
because that pasuk's used for like multiple different, completely different lavim. Like there's a thing about like the Sanhedrin not eating on the day when they've sentenced someone to death, and all these different things. Therefore, you don't get malchus on any of them.
well, wow, that's interesting. I don't know. You might not get malchus, but maybe you get karet. Maybe you get no, you don't get
No, as in
anything.
like you don't get a biblical thing at all. I can post a link
I'm
to
not
you.
sure about that because if you look at the previous Rashi, go back to the Rashi in the Mishnah. He says about the lave, eno avar alav liot b'karet. You don't get karet for the blood. U'mesektet kritot mukim la b'lev of. We're talking here about a live of a chicken. She'ein damo kazayit. There's not enough blood there. Ava behema chayev karet. But if it would be a behema, you would get karet. Im lo karo, if you didn't cut it. La'achar bishulo, after you cooked it. Aval basaro eino ne'asar. But the meat isn't actually asur. Why? Shalev chalak, because the lave is slippery. Ve'eno boleya, and it doesn't absorb any blood. So it seems like there's an isser of karet for eating blood, for sure.
Yeah,
But
it looks like it's not
a problematic Rashi here because Rashi is sort of saying, well, when we're talking, there's still an isser on this blood, even though you cooked it. Maybe he's talking about eating it raw. I don't know. It's a bit fuzzy to me. Yeah.
Well,
Alice, you want to
Rashi,
say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, so is it still considered dam ha'evarim even in the case of heart, right, which has a lot of blood and which is like very, very different than dam ha'evarim in the piece of meat and
Well, right, exactly. So this the Gemara or the Mishnah in Kritot or the Gemara in Kritot seems to be saying that you could get karet if you ate the blood in the heart of an animal, but it might be only when it's raw. And maybe that's what Rashi meant in the first Rashi. He was talking about eating the milk raw. In other words, I'm not sure exactly what Rashi is thinking. It might be that he's trying to say the whole thing is talking about raw and then cooked. But anyway, Rashi says it's a dafka, a chicken heart where there's not enough blood, and that's why it's eno over alav, because you don't get punished for eating less than a zayat of blood. Not because it's derabanan, but because it's less than a shiur. Now there are this is just one way to learn. I forget where I saw, but there was another. Maybe we're gonna see if we have enough time in some of the things that I wanted to see today. That another Mefarish says Mapitom. They're both Rabbanan. I don't understand what you're talking about. They're both Rabbanan. So let's go with the simple pshat that they're both Rabbanan. Even though Rashi seems to be throwing in this idea that it's because it's Chetzi Shir, and then then we get into a machloket of whether Chetzi Shir is Asur D'Oraita or Rabbanan. But whatever. Let's just stick with the simple pshat that I think is that they're both cases of things that are Asur D'Rabbanan, and for whatever reason, by heart, it's even b'diavad. They forbid it even b'diavad. The rabbis. Well, you can like Rashi and say no. They forbid it. The Torah forbid it because it's Chetzi Shir, and so by the heart it's Chetzi Shir, and it's only talking about the chicken heart. Fine. So that's the Gemara. Seifa, right? Alev karo motzi et damo, lo karo eno over. Eno over alav hatam me'aver hu delo avar ha'isura ikka. So therefore, Tananami Reisha, therefore it also taught the first part, Eno over alav, to be in parallel, but really it meant to say it's Eno over alav and it's mutter. Now let's look at the first Rashi here. Ruben, let's look at that first Rashi there. Amar Rav, Eno over alav.
Amar Rav eno over alav midoraita is not over doraita, which seems to be supporting the way you're looking at the Mishnah.
Eno over, right.
It's Isur D'Rabbanan, not an Isur D'Oraita.
Yeah, go on, keep going.
It's mutar to eat it lechatchila if they cooked it previously.
In the wrong way. You cooked it in the wrong way, but now it's mutter to eat it.
Right. Well, I mean, you cooked it without draining the blood, really.
Exactly. Or draining stick to the case of the milk, without draining the milk.
ולא אמרינן אסור מדרבנן. דהה אפילו נסתחת ממנו ויצא, אמרינן לקמן חלב שחוטה מדרבנן הוא. והי כיוון דמבלוע ולא פירש, אפילו איסור דרבנן נקרא. Right, so we learned previously that חלב שחוטה is a דרבנן, right, and in this case it's obviously חלב שחוטה. והי כיוון דמבלוע ולא פירש, אפילו איסור מדרבנן נקרא. And in this case, since it's the milk was belua into the udder, and didn't return it, I guess.
Piresh didn't exude, it didn't come out.
Right. Didn't come out. Even like a soda ban there isn't.
So what's the Isur D'Rabbanan? Where is there an Isur D'Rabbanan?
Well, Chalav Shechuta.
Chalav Shchuta, not all Chalav Shchuta. Chalav Shchuta that comes out. A glass of as you squeezed out Chalav, you actually. If you go to YouTube and you can start looking up what these kachals are, and it grosses me out a little bit. I was looking about it though. You can find a person who cutting up a udder and cooking it, and also I saw a picture of a person squeezing an udder after it had been removed from the animal and getting milk out of it, like milking it like you would milk a live animal, but milking a udder in isolation, and milk came out. So if you did that. That's what the rabbis forbid. That milk that you squeeze that into a glass, so now that's Asur D'Rabbanan. But milk that's in the udder, is not even, that's not dam shapir, that's not dam, it has to be dam shchuta shapiresh. That's dam shchuta, but it's not shapiresh, so there's no issue.
Okay, so
Chalav.
while it's still in
Chalav.
the udder, I'm sorry, Joel, go for it.
No, I was saying chalav shchuta shapiresh, right? Versus dam, right? Because we're talking about.
Oh, I
chalav
said
here.
dam?
You did, yeah. You
Oh, sorry,
switched.
yeah. Chalav shchuta, it's chalav shchuta shapirish. That's what the rabbis forbid. And he says,
Okay.
when you cook it without squeezing out anything, it's not called dam pirish. It's not called dam. Sorry,
Chalav.
chalav shchuta shapirish. It's called chalav shchuta.
So hold on a
Sorry.
second. While the milk is still in the udder, if we go by Rashi, it's not called milk, right? The
Right.
chalav mikra. However, once you squeeze it out of the udder, then it reverts back to becoming milk, the Rabbanan.
Not
Mhm.
really. No, it's still not milk. It's a
So what's the
special name
Isser?
called chalav shchuta. Milk.
Shapesh.
It's a different
Oh.
term. It's a different. There's categories. There's chalav shchuta, and chalav shchuta shapiresh. And when it's in the milk, either way, it's not called milk. It's not proper milk, because the worst you're going to get is Rabbanan. If it would be proper milk, it would be Yasser D'Oraita. That's so Rashi was saying that, first of all, don't think there's any Yasser D'Oraita here, because it's not proper milk. Now he's saying it's also not an Yasser D'Rabbanan, because it never was Piresh.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When you said the chalav shchuta sheperesh, like when you milk it out, is asur derabanan. It is itself asur derabanan, or it's asur to cook with meat derabanan.
That's a good point. It's asur to cook with meat.
Okay.
I feel like this ties back into our discussion in Pei Zayin, right? That there's a certain linguistic limit at what we conventionally call milk, right? So challah from a woman that doesn't cut it, but okay, maybe it's derabanan because of Marianne close enough, but there is this sort of
Right.
category of stuff that we wouldn't normally call the thing, but is like in some technical way, like it has the same chemical.
Right. But again, it may be milk. The Gemara is not discussing whether, philosophically, I don't know what the right word is, like whether empirically this is milk or whether this in the category of milk, what human perception of milk is. That's not what it's discussing. What we mean to say when it's not called milk, what we mean to say is it doesn't fit into the category of milk, which is prohibited to cook with meat. In other words, when the Torah says don't cook a kid in its mother's milk, when that milk is a specific type of milk that it's referring to. It's referring to, regular milk. All these other kinds of milks is not what the Torah was referring to. They may or may not be milk, but that's not the milk that the Torah was referring to in the prohibition. You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. When Rashi says it doesn't have the shame of chalav, he means in the context of basar b'chalav. I don't think he's giving a global concept of what milk is. No, is that? I don't know.
I mean, why
He's saying,
can't you just?
I'm being a minimalist. Minimally, that's what he's saying. He may also be saying something about it, but minimally, he's just saying about in our context. Yeah. Okay, but let's go on. So wait a second. So this Rashi I think is very important, because the Rashi is saying that there's a rabbinic prohibition on milk. I guess cooking meat in milk that was piresh that came out after the shechting, but that didn't come out. Okay, so let's go back. So go back to the Gemara, Reuven.
Hold on a second. Where were we at? Lima Misaeli?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Lima Misaeli. So let us say that the following Braita supports the opinion that we just stated. So what's the Braita? Akechal korah u'motzi et chalbo, lo kera u'eino over alav. Alev korah u'motzi et damo, lo kera korah u'lachar bishulo u'mutar. Okay,
So this Braita is very similar to ours, but it's different.
With a caveat, right? The caveat being that, like, in the case of the lev, after you cook it, it's not automatically mutar. You'd still have to do some kind of like draining.
Exactly. So go on.
Lev hu de ba'ik kriya, val kechal lo ba'ik kriya. Do you see from there that it's only the lev that requires a kriya lechatchila, but kechal doesn't need kriya whatsoever. דילמה לב הוא דסגלה בקריאה, אבל ככה לא סגלה בקריאה. So maybe, sorry, I think the Gemara just rejects the previous statement.
It says,
That's the
yeah, he
point.
rejects the previous statement. And it says, Dilma lev hu desagi le bekriya. Maybe it's not that you don't have to do the kriya after you cooked it, like you do have to do with the heart, and therefore, as we were trying to say that the lev is mutter, maybe it's usser, and the cutting it after the fact is not sufficient, doesn't help you any. Cutting it after you cooked it is lo sagile bekriya. Aval kacha, it said that the other one is sagile. Aval kacha lo sagile bekriya.
So
The
the
kachal, it doesn't help that you cut it afterwards.
the underlying assumption behind the question is that kichal would be more chamor than lev in a way.
Yeah. We were first saying, you see that it's more lenient because you have to do something to the lave to eat it. Afterward, you have to cut it. But I didn't say do anything for the chalav, for the udder. And now it's saying no, it didn't say do anything because there's no way to eat it. That's why I didn't say do anything, because there's no fixing, there's no tikkun for this thing at this point.
Right, and the Gemara would only make sense if we assume that both of them are Derabanan, no one of them being Doraita and the other one Derabanan. Right, because we had a question at the beginning of this year whether draining the blood was Doraita or Derabanan. You were saying that it's a Derabanan, right? Like the question of the Gemara only makes sense if the blood of the heart is a Derabanan, not Doraita.
Saying if it would be Doraita, then what would be the problem?
Well, the question just wouldn't stand, right? Because we know that the Kichal is the Derabanan and the blood of the heart is a Doraita. Right? So how could you say that
It's more lenient?
Exactly.
Well, but look at Rashi. Rashi's going to say the difference is because not of just a technical din, but because of the nature of the substances. So look at wait a second. Yeah, look at Dilma. Look at Rashi Dilma.
לא תניא משום דלב הוא דסגלה בקריאה, דלאחר בישול משום דבשעת בישול לא בלה דשיה. Right, so basically stating that it's different, right? That the heart in the time of the bishul is not like.
What does Shia? What does Shia mean? Shia means like it's slippery or it's hard. It doesn't absorb.
Right. It's like
it's hard meat and doesn't absorb. Now read the next one. Aval kachal.
שהוא רע כבר נבלעו בו החלב על ידי בישול. So kechal is made of a different substance. Right?
It's like a sponge. It's
right, has a different.
Actually, I saw in this video. It looks like Jello. It's like a wobbly kind of Jello thing that you could, and it's not at all hard. So after you cook.
Right, after you cook it, like it's not sufficient to do kriya because the milk was absorbed, I guess, deeply into the kachal.
Right.
So I'm guessing that bishul adds another layer, right? Like prior to bishul, it was embedded.
It's not sagi. It's not sagi.
Right. So prior to bishul, it was embedded in the kachal in like, I guess, a lighter way. Like it wasn't as deeply embedded in the kechal. Well, after bishul, it becomes part of the kechal in a way.
Exactly. It's inseparable. It's not separatable. Okay. So basically we're left with indeterminate. We're indeterminate here. We do not know. We have no proof, but we do have the statement of Rav that it is mutter. Ein over elav mutter.
Right. So you're not over the Doraita. If we go after Rashi, if we go by Rashi.
So go read now Ikeda Amre.
So there's a different version that says that Rav Zera says the name of Rav, Ein over alav v'asur, that you're not over an Isur Doraita, but it's still asur to do it Rabbanan.
Right. So go through this part quickly because it's basically the same thing in reverse. But basically the main difference right now is that what did Rav say? Did he say it's Ein over alav musar or what? Or Ein over alav asur? That's the main difference, but the limud here is going to be pretty much the same. So just read this to us with proper punctuation.
Lima Messiah, Ein over alav, mi'avar hu delo avar, ha'isuraika, ha'isuraika, bedin hu de'isura namilika, v'da de'bale min esefar, chalav koro motzi damo, lo karao Ein over alav. Da'atam mi'avar hu delo avar, ha'isuraika, tanana miresha Ein over alav.
Right. So that's the same thing, but in reverse. That it's just trying to be parallel to the ratio of the seifa. Okay. Tashma.
תשמע, הכיכל קוראו ומוציא את חלבו, לא קראו אינו עובר עליו. הלב קורא ומוציא את דמו, לא קראו לאחר בישולו, ומותר. לב הוא דברי קריאה, אבל כיכל לא ברי קריאה. So basically we're going back to the brighter that we've seen earlier. דילמה לב הוא דסגלה בקריאה, אבל כיכל לא סגלה בקריאה. So maybe that's only the lev that you could eat while doing kriya after bishul. However, you were more machmir in the case of kechal, just to the explanation that was provided by Rashi. And in this case, you can't do kriya after bishul because it just wouldn't help.
Right. So we're on in Hullin daf kuftet amud bet. So now we have these two lishnas. Let's read. So read we're now going to bring a brayta to try to support one of these lishnas. Is it mutter b'diavad or asur b'diavad? So Tanya Kalishna Kama.
Tanya Kalishna Kama derav. We have a Braita Mishnah, I guess. A Braita that basically supports the first statement of Rav. Kechal shebishlo b'chalbo mutar. A kechal that was cooked in its milk is permitted. Keva shebishla b'chalva asur. So in the case of a keva, which I think a stomach, right, that was cooked in its milk is asur. ומה הפרש בין זה לזה? כנוס
מה הפרש?
ומה ההפרש בין זה לזה? זה כנוס במאיו, וזהו אין כנוס במאיו.
So wait, so before you read anything, what's the difference between a stomach being cooked with the milk that the calf nursed and therefore has some milk in his stomach or her stomach, and then you cook the stomach versus the udder, which is also has milk in it. So the difference is that one is kanus b'me'av and one is the stomach is kanus b'me'av. So what's the difference?
Well, one of it is real milk that was absorbed from the animal, I'm guessing, and the other one is not real milk, as we defined earlier. That's like basically the basic difference.
Well, Rashi explains it's a matter of where things are concentrated, right? That for kachal, the milk doesn't actually get so collected together and within it because it hasn't actually come out of the breast yet. But for the stomach, it actually is all sitting in one place.
Right. So in
I mean, the simple words is it sitting in one place or is it spread out? But Rashi actually is bothered by that because is that a reason? Is that enough of a reason? One is kanus, one is like inside. I would even say kanus is a reason to be matir. It's kanus, it's like separated. And the other is, well, but which, now there's kanus is actually, go ahead.
Rashi is, I think, pointing out that Rashi is pointing out that it has not yet become milk. This is what this is.
Exactly.
This is
Rashi, I think that Rashi is actually, is like a Klomar Rashi, is changing a way of reading the Gemara. Let's look at Rashi now. I'm just saying, I was trying to get you guys to say what the pshat is before looking at Rashi. I didn't want to hear what Rashi says, but first I want to say what could be the simple meaning. One is that it's kanus, that it's like it's surrounded by the stomach, and the other kanus, it's not surrounded. So because it's surrounded by the stomach, maybe that makes it better or worse. It's not clear what the idea is. So Rashi gives an explanation. Where's the Rashi? At the top here. Keva, there. Ze kanus b'me'av. That Rashi. So it's at the top. It's sort of like 10 lines down, for 15 lines.
Do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh,
right.
So he's
as
going
soon
back
as
to
it
his
comes out,
definition.
right.
He's going back. If it's parash, since he suckled from his mother, it's now parush, and therefore it's got a shame of milk on it, and therefore it's milk.
Right. So as soon as the milk
Rashi should have
comes out
said,
of the way, it becomes milk.
what should the Gemara have said according to Rashi? What should the Gemara have said according to Rashi?
Like ze yatsa.
Exactly. Ze parush, ze eno parush. Ze parush me'imo, ze lo parash me'imo. That's what it should have said. This one came out and then it didn't come out. But the Gemara says this is kanus. So Rashi does like a little bit of a rewriting of the Gemara and says, no, it just means that. It means the same thing, really. But don't.
And if you think about it, there's also a good reading of just with the pasuk in mind. This is not milk that the kid could have been drinking because it has not yet come out. So it's not, even though the fact that it's in the place where the kid would be drinking from, but it is not yet the milk that one could that the kid would be enjoying.
Right. Okay, Joel, you want to say something?
I want to save the Rashi's Pshat here for a second. If that's, I know it's not a Gemara here, but me'av, right? And coming the innards, but it often means keva, right? So in other words, one is milk in the stomach, and one is not milk in the stomach. And so Rashi's like, yeah, like it's a very weird term. So it must be that until it gets to the stomach, it's not milk. I think that's the way the Rashi's trying to understand
No,
it.
but that's
Right,
not
there's lots of
true,
milk
because
that
if
never
you
gets to the
never
stomach,
get
it's
to the
still milk.
stomach, it could go to a glass.
But you're right.
of milk.
Okay, but or rather, if it never leaves the udder, then it's not milk,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But he's
the Gemara
reading,
should have said that.
me'av. But he's reading me'av in a very diuk manner, right? He's like, what me'av? What does that have to do with the dadim, right? That has nothing to do with it, with the kachal, right? So
I
think
have
that's how.
I'm just saying Rashi's being consistent. He's putting in his same concept here, where the Gemara, it's not 100% clear that that's what the Gemara meant. It may be no other way to read the Gemara, but he's certainly the Gemara should have said, like I said, Zeh parush v'zeh eno parush. Yavne.
I agree. I think he's like pushing the Gemara in the direction that he wants to understand it, but I think maybe it could point to a reasoning behind Rashi's understanding, which is that like in the udder, the milk is never, there's never like a quantity of milk in one place. It's like it's absorbed into the meat itself, and that's why it's not milk yet, and therefore like it's the kanus that's the issue. Like it has never been kanus. It's like it's absorbed in achila, and therefore it never was.
But again, Rashi
milk.
doesn't say that. Rashi says Mishiyatsa midadei behema halavu. The key factor that causes it to become halav is that it goes out. The kachal eino kanus b'me'av. Klomar, and I'm adding the word klomar. In other words, the kachal eno kanus b'me'av. The milk is not in its klomar shelo yatsa midadei. That means that it didn't come out. Me'abehema b'chaya, didn't come out when she was alive. V'lo ne'asaf, and it wasn't collected together. Elamuvla b'basar, who it's just absorbed in the meat. V'lo ba l'klal chalav, and therefore it's not considered. It hasn't yet become the category of milk. But we still do kriya because it's similar to milk. I'm just saying Rashi is putting his reading. Rev Landis.
Yeah, as we properly talk about emphasis on Meshiyatza, we just should say, I think, a line regarding when it's still inside of the mother. So it's part of that system, And who's that system? It's not its own system, it's the mother's system. And when it's the mother's system, it's not chalad for the mother because she doesn't need chalad. It's just part of that overall system.
Wow.
Meshiyatza is a different, goes into that, everything you said, it goes into that independent system.
It sounds like you're getting into the right to life Roe versus Wade issue, which is interesting. You're saying as long as it's part of the mother, it's in the mother's system, and it's dependent on the mother. It's not something that's come out yet, so it doesn't change its status. It's still the mother.
It's part of a system in that, and I'm ignoring debate. Okay, the debate, and it doesn't have a separate existence, which has all to do with Ben Pakua and everything else. I mean, right? I mean, there's a consistent halacha here.
Yeah.
Shech, the mother, you find a fully formed fetus inside. Why do you even call it a fetus? Now I'm getting into it. Why do you call it a fetus it's a fetus because it's already been in the mother and it stays with the mother, and that's the identity. Meshiyasa that it has its own identity. It's consistent. The halacha here is consistent.
Shkoyach, yeah, shkoyach.
I mean,
Um,
we saw this in a similar concept show up in the dinim of eggs, right? When does the meat, the fetus inside of the egg actually become basar?
right. It's the same thing. Like Rav Landis said, is it part of the parental system or has it become separate?
So can
So
we
I'm
apply the same? Can we apply the same rational, but on the flip side, like for blood? So blood is only nikradam while it's still part of the system. However, once you're done with it, the bema is dead. It's no longer called blood. And it seems to
Well, it doesn't quite work because the blood, if it came out when you shechted the animal, so that would be usur. But
right. But I'm
It's
saying
not
like
it's
it's
not,
somewhat
it's
similar.
not,
It's not different. It's
it's not an
similar.
equivalent thing because it is not either an independent entity or a product that is being released from an animal. Blood is supposed to stay inside the animal,
The
and eggs
nefesh.
and milk, I think their understanding, are supposed to leave the animal.
no, but we did see that dam shechuta shepiresh is the rabbanan, the raita. So it doesn't have the din of blood anymore, and I think it would make sense. Right, so blood is only nikra blood while it's still in the animal, so dam shechuta, which is asur deraita. However, once the animal is dead and the blood is no longer part of its system, then it automatically becomes a derabanan. It's the same rational, but in reverse.
It's very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah, I like it. Let's go on.
Not bad.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go on. So this is going to be a Messiah. They were trying to resolve which Lishna is right. We're back to this question. Is it Bidi Evid if you didn't do Kriya on this Kahal, Bidi Evid, is it Mutter or is it, can you eat it or can you not eat it? And we bring this, Tanya Kalishna Kama, the Rav Kahal Shebashlu Bechalbo, Mutter, Keva Shebashla Bechalba, Asur. So ignoring the Keva, but we have an answer. It's if it says that the Kahal that you didn't, what does it mean? Bashlu Bechalbo. You didn't do Kriya. It still had its milk in it. It's mutter. So we're done. Fresh ben and what's the difference? Okay, so it sounds like we have a very good proof that it's okay, B'diavad, to not do Kriya. Now we go on. But we still go on with the question of, but you still l'chatchila need to do Kriya. So you want to read more, Reuven?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah, okay. So Ketzad Koro.
Ketzad Koro. So how do we rip it up? Amar Rav Yehuda Koro Shti Va'erev. So you do it lengthwise and widthwise. V'tacho bekochal. I'm not exactly sure what that means. Oh, then you no, so you tear lengthwise and widthwise, and then you smear it against the wall.
Right, you press it against the wall, exactly, to squeeze out any blood, any milk that might be in it. Go ahead.
Amar Rav Elazar, l'shmiya kchali ve'ani echal. Right, so sorry, I'm not really sure.
So this is a story. Rab Elazar said to his servant, Karali, rip the udder or cut the udder, va'ana ichol, and I will eat it. And now the Gemara asks, my kamash malan, which is my kamash malan. What is this? I think the only way I thought about this. Who's the Gemara asking on? It's my kamash malan. What does he come to teach us? Well, first of all, who says Reb Elazar is trying to teach us anything? He's hungry. He just said to his servant, go and give me something. Why is he trying to teach? I think, tentatively, that somebody wants to suggest an answer?
I don't think
you don't need to repress it.
It's not what Rabbi
first.
Elazar is trying to teach us. It's why is the Gemara mentioning this immediately after?
Exactly.
And
So
the
I think it's a
answer is-
question on the editor. It's a question on the
Yes.
editor. That was my answer.
Right.
It's a question, why did
Because
the
it
editor
appears-
put this here? We don't have to have every story that ever was. We want to have stories that teach us a halacha. So what's halacha is this story teaching us? So I think that's the question. My kamash malan, what does this tell me teach us? And then we say, matitini, there's a Mishnah. We already know our Mishnah says that you have to cut it. Kachal, hakachal kor'o motzi et achelbo. It says you're supposed to cut it and remove. By the way, how do you read the Mishnah? I didn't discuss this before. If you go back to the Mishnah, kachal kor'o umotzi et chalbo. What does that mean? Does that mean there's two ways to read it? I'll just point out there's two ways to read it. One way is to read it kor'o, and by cutting it, you will inevitably bring out the milk. That is how you bring out the milk, by cutting it. The other way of reading it is kor'o, you should cut it, and then you should do another thing. Now you should motzi et chalbo. You should kor'o motzi chalbo, which would be pushing it against the wall. In other words, cut it, shetiva erev, and then push it against the wall. Motzi et chalbo. There's two ways to read the Mishnah. You could read this lima that we just have now directly into the Mishnah. So
The
anyway,
way I
he's
read
saying
the Mishnah is that umotzi damo implies a secondary
second
action.
action, a second
Right.
action. It's not like in order. It's not that you cut it in order that the blood come out. It's that you cut it and you make the blood come out. So I'm just pointing out that the Mishnah can be read two ways, and perhaps that's where this Gemara comes from. Reading it the second way, that it's rented as two acts. So Ketzad. So we said that was the Ketzad, and then we said the Shmei. So he says, we already know that you have to do Kriya. He just said, oh, cut it. He didn't say how to cut it this way, that way, and push it in the wall. He just said, cut it. So now we see that you could do a minimal kind of cutting. So that's just a story. We have a story now that Rav Elazar said, Paro, do some kind of cutting. Now we have
You don't
another
need
story.
to go as far as Tachol B'Kotel, right? Because you don't.
He didn't tell his servant to Tachol B'Kotel.
No, but when you read the Mishnah, you don't necessarily understand that you have to be Tachol B'Kotel, right? Like a simple squeeze should be enough according to Mishnah. I think the Gemara come to teach us an extra halacha.
Exactly. So let's go with what you're saying. The two ways that I could read the Mishnah are the two ways that the Gemara just now said. The first one was Ketzad. You have to do the two different acts, cutting it and pushing it. And then comes Rav Elazar and says, I read the Mishnah as one act. By cutting it, you remove the milk. So the two different ways of reading the Mishnah is exactly these two cases.
I think the other variable here is, we'll see. And the Rishonim is, when he says cut, does he mean cut Shetiva Arav, or does he might just mean a tiny cut? Which is
That's what I just said. That's what I just
points
said.
out is right, but meaning also, does that tiny cut potentially
Does it remove the milk or not?
are these two different options for different forms of cooking, or does one
Right.
overrule
We'll get into
the
that.
other
We'll get
as a
into
form of
that.
interpretation?
So right, I'm before there. I'm not there yet. Right now, I'm just reading the Gemara. But right, it could be that it's for a different case. But that's exactly what we're going to get into really with the next case with Yalta. Because here it was just cutting. We don't know what he was doing. Was he boiling it? Was he roasting it? Was he frying it? Was he making a pashtida? We don't know what he was doing. He just said, cut it and I'll eat it. Maybe he was eating it raw. I don't know what he doesn't say anything about what he was doing. But the next case is going to be more interesting as far as how to prepare it. And so that's Yalta. So Reuven, I'm enjoying your reading today so much that if you could go on, that'd be great.
I appreciate the compliment, and I'll try my best to read.
Okay.
Amali Yalta Rav Nachman. So Yalta told Rav Nachman, Michte kol de'asar lan rachmana, sharan lan kavate asar lan. So it basically made a statement that anything that's prohibited, God gave us another way to enjoy it. Like it's permitted in another way.
In another way,
For
the same
example,
taste. We can have the taste in a different form.
Right. Asarlan daman asala damas, sharanlan kibidani dam taho. Right? So it says that, for example, you're not allowed to have sexual intercourse with a woman that's nida, but you're allowed to have sexual intercourse in the case where it's blood of purity.
So what is blood of purity? There are two cases that Rashi mentions. One is a virgin after first time having relations, and the second is a woman who gave birth to a boy after blood after 7 or 8 days is considered dam tahor. That's deraita. The rabbis consider all blood to be nida blood, and we don't have this din anymore. But originally there was a din of dam tahor, that any blood was seen after 7 days for a boy and 2 weeks for a girl would be dam tahor.
Reshon of this past parsha.
Good, yeah. So
I
go
want
on.
to, I want to show.
Yeah,
Sorry.
right. In Yana de Yoma. Okay. Go on, Ruvain.
Chelev be'ema, chelev chaya. So
Oh, good. You read that right. You read that right. Chalev, right. Not
right,
chalav,
so-
chalev, right.
So there's a prohibition for the chelev of like a wild animal, but there's a permission for
No, the other way around.
No, sorry, the other way around. Sorry, there is a permission. There is an interdiction, a prohibition for the chelev of a domesticated animal, but there's a permission for the chelev of an undomesticated animal.
Right.
Chazir moched. So chazir, for example, so we're not allowed to eat pig, but mocha de shibuta, the mind or the brain of a fish called shibuta
Right.
is permitted, and apparently it has the same taste.
Go ahead.
Giruta, so fish that's called giruta, you're not allowed to eat it, but you may eat. Giruta lishna de kavata, lishna de kurta, but you could eat the tongue of an animal of a fish that apparently has the same taste.
Right. Eshet ish.
So eshetish, same thing. Girusha bechai bala, but you're allowed to marry girusha bechai bala, which is kind of similar to an eshetish, I guess, to a certain extent.
Right. Go ahead.
Yibama, but sorry.
Eshet ach. Eshet ach.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yivama.
Ishitach also, like you're not allowed to like have sexual intercourse with your brother's wife, but you're allowed to have with a yibama.
Kutit.
Kutit,
Kutit yifator. So you can't marry a non-Jew, but you can
Right.
marry a yifator. Go
right, so
on.
perfect. Sorry, I just have to find my spot.
So ba'inan.
Ba'ina lemicha bischa bechalva.
So she
And
wants
this-
to eat milk and meat.
Right.
Amar Lahu Rav Nachman, her husband.
So ba'ina lemicha basra bechalva. Amaru Rav Nachman letivche zavikala kichale. So you could eat.
No,
You could
Letipchi,
roast
I think means to his
Okay,
to
yeah,
his
right.
to his
He
chef.
told his servant or to his chef, like, go and roast an otter for her.
Right, roast an udder for her. So let's look at Rashi and Tosfot here on this. What did he say exactly? So Rashi, if you look at Zviku, he says shpudu.
Shipudu.
Put it
Right.
on a shipud. Tenula
Kichal
kachal b'shipud. Put it roasted. If you roast it, he didn't say do kriya, right? He didn't say do any kriya. He didn't say any preparation. Just said roast it. Apparently, you could roast it without doing any kriya. He just says shupta. Just put it on a roasting.
Well, you do some kind of kriya when you put it on the roast, right? Because
Well, I mean,
have
you
to, like-
puncture it. You puncture
Yeah,
it,
you
but I'm not
puncture
sure.
it.
I'm not sure if the puncturing is enough to call it kriya. But in any case, he said you puncture it with a shipud and roast it. What exactly he was trying to get it to be in a case, I think that Rav Nachman was trying to say, don't tacho b'kotel, because if you tacho b'kotel, you're going to get no milk in it, and it won't really taste like basar b'chalav anymore. You got all
Right.
the milk out. So he
The
says,
point
do a
is turning to milk.
shipud, and you have a heter. Let's look at Tosfot. Tosfot says, zviku lakachli.
No, but I think the
Here-
point he's trying to make is that you're allowed to taste basar b'chalav in this case.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. But the point is, we're
Even if
interested
the
in,
chalav is still within, like.
but we're
you're allowed-
interested in why didn't he listen to what the Mishnah said, which was to do kriya.
to kriya and then tacho b'kotel.
He
right?
didn't say anything about kriya. The other, he's even more makel than Rav Elazar, who said karali and ve'ichli. He said at least do kriya. This guy says, no, we almost have 3 levels. The first one says you do kriya, shati ve'erev, and tacho b'kotel. The next one says just do kriya. And now we have a case that says don't do anything. Just do shipud. It's almost like, why is he so makel? So look at Tosfos. Tosfos has a different shot. He says, perish be'aruch kamo zikim le'im. It's like zikim le'im. And he's explained. Dami le zikuni de armai perish Perak Sheni the Masechet of Zara. Klomar, what does it mean? Nefuchim, full, puffed up. Ken hacha kachal. Also, this kachal kamo nod nafuach. It's like a bag full of liquid. Malei chalad, full of chalad. Velo nikra, and it was not cut. In other words, he's not telling her the method of cooking. He's dafka telling, I'm sorry, him. He's telling his chef to keep it whole. Don't do any, he's dafka specifying, don't do a kriya. I don't want any kriyas going on here. Keep it full, like a sack of, like a wine skin full of wine. And contrast says, like we said, so there's two different shots. I'm just saying what the difference is that Tosfos is saying, or is quoting the Aruch, is saying that it means dafka keep it with as much milk as possible. And the other one, and Rashi is saying, well, if you're going to keep with milk in it, then you better put it on a shiput.
But both of them agree that it has to be, presumably both Rashi and Tosfos think that it has to be dafka roasting.
Well, according to Tosfos, you don't have any time that the word roasting is mentioned. It just said, make sure it's full. We don't know what, he did not specify the methodology of cooking, according to Tosfos. According to
the Gemara itself then says that.
Well, so let's go to the Gemara. Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, let's go to the Gemara. So here, I'll give you a break, Reuven. Yavni, you can read. So, so read the Gemara here. So he says to his tabach, zikula kachli. And now the Gemara has a question.
But the Mishnah says it should, like you said, the Mishnah says to rip it. How is he giving that command without saying to rip it first? Deah. That's only if you're having it in a pot.
So wait, so Hahula Kadera seems to be that he's saying, yeah, but I meant to say, put it in the fire. Don't put it in the Kadera. And then it could be without the Kriya. The whole Mishnah was talking about cooking it in your cholent, in your stew, not in this method. Okay. Bahakatani. So now go on.
Oh, right. No, actually, I was wrong. I don't remember what it was, but I guess the Tosfot also said something different about what it means, the Kedera, and it's not.
Yeah, we're going to get there. We're going to get there with Kedera. Kedera, according to Rabbeinu Tam, Kedera means an empty pot. No, it means a full pot. And he makes it in a dafka full pot, like I said, like a cholent pot.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Hahula Kedera. That's talking about when you want to put it in a pot with other food.
Right.
Go ahead. Vaha Katani.
והקטני שבשלו דיעבד in לכתחילה לא, הוא הדין דאפילו לכתחילה.
Wait. So where is this Hakatani Shebishlu? Where is that? That's not our Mishnah.
Oh, right. I remember looking for it.
It's right here on the page.
Oh, right.
It's the Breita. It's the Tosefta. It's the Tosefta in about 15 lines up that says Tanya Kalishna Kama Derav Kakal Shebishlu Bichalbo Mutter. That doesn't say anything about doing Kriya the Shativa Erev, but it does say if it Bidievid, it's Mutter, but it doesn't say L'chatchila, it's Mutter. It says Bidievid, it's Mutter. So he says, well, what do you get? So the Gemara asks, how do you explain this Breita? This Breita says, even if you're going to say the most makel opinion, that's mutter, what you're doing, but l'chatchila, you shouldn't have done it. You should have cut it.
I mean, does the Breita unequivocally assume that it can't be mutter l'chatchila? Just as it's mutter.
Well, because it says, well, that's the diuk of the Gemara. Shebishlu. Shebishlu. That they cooked it. Then it has a din of mutter. It doesn't say mutter levashlu. It says shebishlu. So that's the Gemara's diuk. This is hakatani shebishlu, and which implies diavad in l'chatchila lo. You're not supposed to do this. So what's Rav Nachman's answer. Gavni?
הוא הדין דאפילו לכתחילה. ועל ידי דקה באי למתנא סיפא, קיבה שבשלה בחלבה אסורה, דאפילו דיעבד נמי לו, תנא נמי רישא שבשלה. It actually is permitted even lechatchila, but because the second part of the braita is b'diavad, because it's saying even b'diavad, it's a sul in the case of the stomach. That's why we use the language of the shabishlu.
Right.
Yeah.
So, excellent. So let's look at this Rashi here at the bottom of the page. The last Rashi. Keep going, Yavni. Ha'anan.
V'ha'anan kor'o, v'ha'anan tnan, it should say kor'o. V'ha'anan kor'o tnan, ha'hu l'kderad.
That's Rav Nachman's first answer. His first answer was, yeah, that was for a kedera, and we didn't know exactly what that meant. So, what am I talking about? I'm not talking about it for kedera. So, what does Rashi say?
Dechi nafik mine have chalav shchuta, v'chi hadar univla le asar le. So, because while it's cooking in this pot, if the milk will come out, and then it becomes milk, and then when it gets reabsorbed back into the udder, then it's forbidden because it's milk and meat. V'dekatane lo kar'o.
When does that happen? And when does it get absorbed again?
When it's in a vessel as opposed to over fire.
Right.
That's the idea. ודקתני לא קוראו אינו עובר עליו, רב נחמן סביר עלי כלישנא בתרא דרב, וברייתא מוקי לבצלי, דכתיב יבשלו את הפסח בדברי הימים. And when it says, if you didn't rip it, eino over alav, you would think, that b'diavad, it should also be a problem in the pot. It says, yes, indeed, Rav Nachman thinks that like if it's being cooked in a pot, it is a problem b'diavad, and it's like the first version the second version of Rav's statement. And that braita that we brought, that was to prove that it should be according to the other version, that it's permitted b'diavad, that is referring to, like we said, is referring to the case that is referring to tzeli, not
right. That's referring to roasting. In other words, when we said that it's b'diavad mutter, that's roasting.
Right.
And that's where the Gemara then. But when we said that it's but if it's in a pot, then it's usser, and that's according to the Lishna Batra. But when he said that, right, because he says usser in a pot, but if it's in a tzli, then b'diavad it's mutter, according to the. So wait, why does he? But still, so that's the next Gemara's question. Why does he say b'diavad? It sounds like it's b'diavad, and then on that he says no, it's really lechatchila. In other words, the Braita seems to say b'diavad, but it's really the lechatchila, and that's talking about sli, talking about roasting. So the din would be that for roasting you don't have to do anything, but for cooking you have to do kriya, sheti ve'erev, and tachal b'kolto maybe, and then you could cook it in a pot. So that would be the basic din, right? The basic din would be in a pot, do sheti ve'erev, squeeze out the milk, go ahead and boil it up in your pot. But if you want to do it roasting, then lechatchila you don't have to do anything.
Which is familiar to us from like dealing with blood, right? Like it makes sense.
Right. You salt it. You use to salt meat if you want to boil it, but if you want to roast it on the fire, you don't have to salt it. You can just put it directly on. So it's very similar to it. It makes a lot of sense. But what I have a question, and then we'll go to a break. But why does Rashi say it's like the Lishna Batra? Couldn't he have said it like Lishna Kama? That he says by cooking, it's okay. B'diavad, you just lechatchila, you should do it, and by roasting, you don't have to do anything. By roasting lechatchila, you don't have to do anything, and the Lishna Kama would make sense. By cooking, you have to cook it, but you have to cut it. But if you didn't, it would be mutter. So why did he say no? It has to be the second lesson.
Because there has to be something that's aser. It's somewhat, there has to be something that lines up
Why?
with Rob's.
Yeah, there is something that's usher. Cooking it with, no, I
No,
see.
no, because there's no, because
Why does
in,
it have to be
in
something that's usher?
Rashi's,
Why does there have to be something that's usher?
because in Rashi's read, there is no situation that it is Eino Over Alav and Mutar, right? Like it's either Asur, it's in the case, if it's cooking, then it's not even permitted b'diavad. And in the roasting.
Why? But look at the
it's
first
not
Rashi.
even-
Look at the first Rashi on the page. The first Rashi on the page said, there's no Issur D'Rabbanan because when he was explaining that the first Lishna, the first Rashi on the page said, he says, it has to be Chalav Shepiresh, Chalav Shchuta Shepiresh, and this didn't Piresh. This you didn't squeeze out the milk and then pour a cup of milk onto your udder and cook it. You cook the udder and it didn't Piresh. So that was
I think
why
that-
that was the list. That was the logic of the first Lishna, which said mutter. So why can't Rashi say we're going like the first Lishna? See what I'm saying?
But he needs also, he explains Rav Nachman, right? And he needs also to explain where he would, like where he would need Kriya, like Rav
He needs
Nachman
kriya.
also.
I'll tell you where he needs kriya for cooking, but it's
Right.
b'diavad. You don't need it.
Right, because
That's the Lishna Kama. That is the Lishna Kama. That's when the Mishnah said, if you didn't do it,
no, but the way he's explaining that Rav Nachman's opinion that there's a difference between doing it in the pot, the reason why there's a difference in doing it in the pot is because it is, according to Rav Nachman, according to Rashi, it is peresh in the pot, and that's why it's a problem. And if you're saying that it is peresh, then it should be a problem.
but that's only because he wants to
B'diavad
say
too.
that Rav Nachman agrees with Lishna Batra. Rav Nachman didn't say that. Let Rav Nachman say what Rashi says on the first Rashi. My point
how
is,
what
there's two
Rashi-
different Rashis. What I'm pointing out is that there's two different Rashis. There's one Rashi that says that there's no problem of cooking a kachal because whatever comes out is because it's you didn't squeeze it out. It's not piresh, and therefore it's no Issur D'Rabbanan even. And the bottom Rashi says the ki nafik mine have chalap. Now he all of a sudden says when you're cooking it in the pot, it does come out. Ki nafik mine. The last Rashi.
well, because he has to
Have
explain that
shapiresh.
he's
And then it's
he's
cut
explaining-
so all of a sudden he has a different explanation of the physics. In the first one, he explained the physics that nothing comes out. In the second one, he says it does come out and goes back in. So which
Right,
is it? Rashi, make up your mind.
in the second one, he's explaining of Nachman's opinion according to the Gemara that says Hahu L'Kdera. Otherwise, what's the difference? Hahu L'Kdera.
Ra, because like the Lishna Kama. Like the Lishna, how did the Lishna Kama
I think-
explain how the Lishna Kama was also the Kedera? The Lishna Kama also said you should do karver, but if you didn't, it's b'diavad. So that's what Rav Nachman saying.
I think the reason is, or maybe one
I have an
reason is,
answer.
there's
I
a-
have an answer.
there's a Braita that supports each of Rav's statements,
What?
and neither Braita explicitly gets knocked down. So you could say that Rav obviously said one or the other, but neither Braita gets rejected. So at the very least, we have to go with whatever, we have to address both positions. We have to have some position map onto each version.
What Bryce says Usher? What Bryce are you referring to?
For each of Rav's positions, there's a Braita and it says Lema Messiah Leila Rav.
Yeah, but we rejected. We said none of them are proofs. We rejected them all, and then we ended up that there are two lishnas equally valid, and we can't reject either one of them. We don't know which one is right. Rashi says that Rav Nachman is for sure going like this second lishna, even though I'm pointing out that he could go like the first lishna, and there's no reason to say he's going like the second lishna. That's what I'm saying. Because the right thing, we have these two lishnas we didn't decide. All right, let's take a break for 5 minutes. And either I'll tell you the answer when we come back, or we'll read Tosfot, and then I'll tell you the answer. But
Rav Nachum, my apology. I won't be coming back after the break.
Okay.
But I'm looking forward to catching up online.
okay, sure.
Bye,
Good luck with your studies. Joel to read the Tosfot on the bottom of Kuf Het Amud Bet, Hahu L'Kedera, and Joel, go ahead, and I'll
right.
jump in. Now it's going to pick up exactly where we left off on this Rashi that we just read.
So, all right. Piresh Bekontras, the Rav Nachman, Sphirale, Kelishna Batra, the Rav, Uvraita Mokila Bitzli. right? So that the Rashi, right, we saw this in the Rashi, he thinks the Rav Nachman thinks he follows the second Lishna of Rav, right? It was Rav, I think, who we were following in the two different interpretations of the Breita, or two different statements. Sorry, Rabbi Zera Amar Rav. So
Right.
that would say that if you didn't, that's not mutar, it's asur, right? Eno aver alav asur.
Eno aver alav asur, and
Yeah.
he holds that the Breita, we're going to refer to it as the Breita, because the Breita is like very important Breita, because it's the Breita that says
It's Tanaka, like the Lishna Kama, right? That was the Breita.
Kakal shebishlu b'chalvo mutar, which
Exactly.
literally means kakal, that you boiled. I'm going to translate it that way for the moment, intentionally. Kakal, that you boiled in its milk, in the milk that it contained, not in separate milk. Mutter, which sounds like the worst possible case, and yet it's mutter.
Exactly.
You didn't do any kriya and nothing, and you cooked it, you boiled it. And Tosfos says, Rashi says that Rav Nachman says that that's tzli. Actually, it's not boiling; it's roasting.
Keep going.
Go ahead.
As we, right, very famous.
V'dikativ.
By Veshulata Pesach, right? In Divrei Yamim, it says that they did a bishul on the Pesach, which of course everyone knows you can't do bishul on Pesach.
By the way, why do we go all the way to Divrei Yamim? It says in Devarim also Bashlus Pesach. Why didn't he quote Devarim? I'll tell you the answer. Because in Devarim, the Gemara, the Rashi or the Gemara says, it's talking about the shlamim that you could mivashel. In other words, it says bishlas a Pesach, and it answers it doesn't mean the Pesach itself. It means the things that go along with the Pesach. It means the shlamim. But in Divrei Yamim, we don't have that drasha, so therefore that's why he quotes. That's my pshat of why it goes all the way to Divrei Yamim. Okay, which is really the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Very far. He went very far.
This isn't so difficult, right?
It's not a forced reading, is what he means to say.
Yeah. Exactly. Right? Koro lechar bishulo, right? Hainu achar tzliato, right? So we even have it in the Gemara there about the Pesach, right? Ve'inor tzelamar de savar legamre kilishna batra. Okay, now so that deals with the how does Rashi make it that Rav Nachman holds like the lishna batra, but we have the second breita, all right, or this breita that seems to be like lishna kama. So the breita is about sli. And the initial statement.
We're talking about two different things, right? One is talking about sli, and one is talking about bishul. All right, go on. Right?
Right? A few mishnah kama, right? The shari a few lechatchila, right? And so he can't be. He doesn't fully hold like the second version of Rabbi Zera Marav, right? Because he's even actually more makel than the original lishna, right? Because the
original lishna says you should do karo, and if it's sli, you don't have to do anything.
So, but afilu delachachila ela beferush dematnitin savar kilishna batra. But in understanding our Mishnah, he thinks like the second Lishna. The kevan deshari Rav Nachman letzli lechatchila below kriya. Imken haide katani koro hainu likdera kedekamar hacha. Right. So he says, when you understand the Mishnah, when the Mishnah, right, that we understand is the second version of Rabbi Zera Marav, right? And then
in other words, he's not actually agreeing with the Lishna. He's saying the way you have to understand the Mishnah is according to the Lishna Batra. The Beferish, again, Ella Beferush. The Mishnah Savar Kilishna Batra, that the Mishnah is talking about something that's aser to do, aser to eat, b'diavad. B'kevan deshari Rav Nachman letzli lechatchila below kriya im kain had the katani karo. So what does the Mishnah say? Karo hainu lekadera. That must be for the kadera, kedeka amar hacha, like we're saying, and that's why he holds like a Lishna Batra. Go ahead. V'ki katani.
V'ki katani lo karo eno verlav al korchacha eno verlav yasur kevan demari likdera. Right.
What do you mean kevan demari kedera? Who says? Maybe we're talking about sleep.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Well, he's got to read it that way, right? He's at this point. He's forced.
No, but he's using that as his proof. you can't, that's what he's trying to, this is begging the question. This is begging the question. He's proving what he's trying to say by assuming what he's trying to prove. Makes no sense. This Tosfos makes absolutely no sense.
I
You
think
understand?
he.
You understand?
it-
What do you
yeah,
mean?
it-
Al karcha eno over alav v'aser kevan de Myri the kedera. But maybe it's not Myri the kedera. Maybe it's Myri the sli.
So yeah.
I
And
think
then it would be eno over alav mutar. And anyway, maybe it's Myri bishul. And like I said, it's lishna kama. And the lishna kama says bishul. It's mutar because it doesn't come out. So what are you saying? It makes no sense. So here's my okay. Yeah, Aaron. what
I
do you
think.
wanna
I mean, it seems like the Tosfot is saying openly that Rashi has a goal in mind, and then once you have the goal, here are the two pieces, and then that's automatically then how you're interpreting the mission. In that sense,
What
it
goal
seems
in
to make
mind?
a lot of
What,
sense. He's just
why
saying,
does Rashi have any need that he goes like Lishna Batra? Let him be like Lishna Kama. Everything will be fine. What's the goal?
oh, okay, he just seems to say explicitly Rashi just thinks that would be too makel. If he went with the Lishna Batra, then the whole thing would fall apart, and you'd end up with a very makel position, which is what Rabbeinu Tam has.
I think he's just trying
No,
to justify.
Rabbeinu Tam does not disagree with Rashi really.
I-
But
it may
it's
not
just
be.
it's a don't bring in Rabbeinu Tam yet because Rabbeinu Tam is just a
But
subsidiary.
it's just that
Is an addendum to
you could
Rashi.
read the Gemara as most of the other Rishonim do, as creating a fairly permissive system around Kachal, and for whatever reason, Rashi doesn't want that, and so he reads
Yeah,
the
but that's not
Gemara
what
in a
Tosfos
particular
says.
way.
He said, but that's not what Tosfos says. He says, Al Karka, you have to say, Eno Aver Lava Aser, Kaven the Myri Kedera, because we're talking about a Kedera. I want to dig deep into those words.
He just says, "Ve'eno rotzeh lomar desavar legamre kilishna batra." Right? He says that Rashi has a particular agenda.
Wait a second, let me see where you're sitting.
In the Ritzoneloma, right? It's
He said no, "Eno rotzeh."
right, but it says and like it's just that this is I read that as though this is not to say, not Rashi doesn't say.
I mean, I get the feeling he's just trying to say, here's how you could read it like Rashi. Not that he says this is the only reading, right? But this is how Rashi's reading would work.
Where are you seeing Rotzeh Lomar? I'm looking for that.
I was reading it as just like not a characterization of what Rashi wants or doesn't want.
I think I agree with you, Alan, but I'm just trying to find the words. Which line are you talking about?
The third line that Tosfot right in the middle. Ve'eno rotzeh lomar desavra legamre kilishna batra.
He can. He just mean, yeah, that's not a desire. He doesn't mean to say, that's all he said. The translation of that is he doesn't mean to say that he entirely holds like the Lishna Batra because he's actually more makel than the Lishna Batra. Anyway, here's my answer. Here's my answer to this question that I'm trying to. I hope you got the question, or but maybe you didn't. Maybe you'll think about it more. But here's my answer. My terms. Because really the question is on Rashi. Why did Rashi say in the Lishna Kama that it is not a problem? He explained it very nicely because it's not poresh. It's dam shchut. It's chalav shchuta shelo parash. And in the first, that's the first Rashi on the page. The last Rashi on the page, he says cooking it is a problem. So how can you just? I mean, the Rashi. What does he do? He can explain. He's like the cat. He's like the defense attorney and the prosecuting attorney. He can say anything, but why should we believe him in the first time and not believe him the second time? It's the same person. Why? What does he mean? So here's my answer. My answer is that the Lishna Kama. Why is it Mekel? Because it's assuming that the Mishnah is talking about sleep. And that's why it's matir. It's saying the Lishna Kama is saying it's mutter because it's sleep. And then Rashi is explaining it's sleep, and therefore nothing goes back in. But the Lishna Basra that says that it's usser is saying, no, the Mishnah is talking about cooking, about boiling. And therefore, because the Mishnah doesn't say anything, the Mishnah just says, Kachal shekaro motzi et chalbo lo karo ein over. He doesn't say what you do. He doesn't say anything about bish, doesn't even have the word bishul there, doesn't have the word sleep, doesn't have any words. It just says what you're supposed to do. So what is the Mishnah talking about? Is it talking about sleep or is it talking about bishul? The Lishna Kama is Mekel because it understands the Mishnah is talking about sleep. The Lishna Batra is Mekel because is machmir because it understands the Gemara is talking. The Mishnah is talking about bishul, and bishul, of course, you have to be machmir, and that's why Rashi said, of course, in bishul you have to be machmir. And when Rashi in the first place said you have to be mekel, he's because it's slave. And so when Reb Nachman comes and says by tzli you don't have to do anything, al korcha, you can't be going like the Lishna Kama, because the Lishna Kama is saying in tzli you need to do something, right? The Lishna Kama is saying in tzli you need to do kriya, but therefore he must be holding like Lishna Batra, because the Lishna Batra is saying no, the Mishnah is talking about bishul, so on that he can agree. And then you can read the Tosfos, and it makes sense. If you go back to the Tosfos, he says, Perish b'kantris derav Nachman Svir lekelishna batra derav ubraita makila b'tzli. The Braita is tzli. The Mishnah is bishul. Kidikativ yivashlu at the Pesach, etc., etc., etc. Ketzad sol, and I'm skipping a little bit. After he just proves that you can say use the word bishul for tzli. Hainu acher tzliya, tzliyato. The eno rotze lomar shesaver legamre kilishna batra daha mekel tfei, because he's not fully holding like the lishna batra because he's mekel tfei milishna kama, because the lishna kama said in tzli you need to do kriya, and he's saying in tzli you don't need to do dishari afilu lechatchila, right, without any kriya in tzli. Beferish the matnitin savar kilishna batra. Right. Ella beferush the matnitin, in the explanation of the Mishnah savar kilishna batra, that the Mishnah is talking about bishul. The kevan deshari Rav Nachman litzli lechatchila below kriya, since he said that you could do it lechatchila without kriya by tzli. In Cain, Hadakatani Koro, Haino the Kedera. When it says in the Mishnah Koro, it must be for Kedera, because he holds that you don't need to do that. Vahacha Amar Hacha. Vaki Katani Lo Karo, Aino Overalav, Al Korcha, Aino Overalav Aser, because it's talking about Bishul. Kevin Demir be the Kedera.
Yeah, but couldn't you say though that you could keep the same chiluk, that the Mishnah's about Kedera and the Braita is about Sli, and say that he still holds like Lishna Kama, that he holds that when you bring it to the Kedera it requires Kriya, right? Sheti Verev and V'tachol B'kotel, and when Sli you don't require that, and that's the Braita, right? He could still make the same.
Say again.
He could still read there's why are we forced to say that Rav Nachman says that follows Lishna the Lishna Batra of Amar Rabbi Zera Amar Rav? He could say that for Kedera I hold the first Lishna, and for Tzli I hold the Braita, right? That also would work, wouldn't it?
No, because the only reason that because the Lishna Kama is saying mutter b'di'evid because it's understanding it as Tzli. What I'm saying is there's no actual machloket in din between the two lishnas.
Yeah,
they're just a machloket in beferush hamishna, like the Tosot said. The question is, how do you understand the Mishnah? Is the Mishnah talking about tzli? There's no argument between the two lishnas in the din. So if his din by tzli is that you don't need to do anything, then he can't be going like the Lishna Kama, because that says by tzli you need to do something.
Yeah, that I understand.
So he has to be going by the Lishna Batra, which means that the Mishnah is saying only about Bishul you need to do Kriya. And then where does he get his din that you don't need to do it at all? That's from the Braita. The Braita is his source for Tzli.
But he could say that if to Kedera you do have to do Kriya, Lechatchila, and if you don't, it's Mutar, right? He could say that, and then he could say for Tzli, for the
then
Braita.
He wouldn't be going like either Lishna.
No, he'd be going like the first Lishna, right?
No, because the first Lishna is talking about not Kedera, it's talking about Tzli.
No, if you could say the first Lishna is talking about Kedera, right? And the Braita is talking.
I'm saying that's not, because that's not true.
Why not?
If it would be, why not? Because I'm just saying that's the Havana. The Havana is the first Mishnah is explaining the first Mishnah is explaining the Mishnah be talking about sleep. And the second
Yeah.
Mishnah is, there's no argument in din, is what I'm saying. There's just an argument in the Perush of the Mishnah.
Yeah,
What you would be saying, what you would be proposing would be that there'd be an actual argument in the din.
Yeah, exactly. I'm arguing on the Tosfot here, saying like they don't have. I don't think that it's mukhrach that you have to say that the way they say it. But
Maybe, yeah, maybe. I'm just trying to explain the Tosfos. I'm explaining the Tosfos, and I think explaining the Rashi. I'm explaining that the assumptions all make sense if you have one axiom at the beginning, which is that an unproved, maybe perhaps unprovable axiom, but one axiom at the beginning, that the two Lishnas are not actually arguing in din, they're arguing in the Perush of the Mishnah, what the Mishnah was referring to. Was it referring to a case of Tzli or Bishul? And then Tosfos' argument makes sense. I mean, I'm just doing the math. I'm doing the logical math in order to get Tosfos to make sense, and it also to make Rashi, and happens to make Rashi make sense also.
yeah, I'm just claiming Rashi didn't have to say what he said. That is the Lishna Bacha. Like he could have said it differently. But I guess we're going to see that.
Maybe,
So it's
maybe. Okay, so now
Rabbeinu Tam.
Rabbeinu Tam. Now we're getting so basically like this. What's the din according to Rav Nachman? Let's say Rav Nachman is the posek. So then we've got this. What's the din?
For Tzli Lecharchila, you don't have to do kriya, and you can go and cook it. And for Bishul, you have to do kriya, and if you didn't do kriya, it's asur. You don't know
asur.
But it's asur.
Right, it's asur. He's not totally makel about everything. It's asur, but by Tzli, you don't.
By the way, yeah, sounds like even I went to put it in a pot alone, right? I'm just gonna make that diuk now, right?
Well, no, we don't know, but we don't know yet. But why is it asur? Why is it asur? Tell me that. Go one more step. Why is it asur? What kind of is it? Isur d'oraita or d'Rabbanan?
Oh, Isur d'Rabbanan for sure, right?
And why is it? What's the category? What causes it to be an Isur d'Rabbanan if you cook this? If you cooked it?
Because it looks like an Isur d'oraita.
You're going jumping ahead because marit ayin. Yeah. All right. It looks like that's what everybody says, and that's what the Shachan and Taz say. Yeah, it's marit ayin, but what is the mechanism of the Isser though? What's happening? According to Rashi, what did Rashi say?
Is that it exudes and then reabsorbs the milk, right?
Yeah, exactly. The milk goes out during the cooking process and then goes back in and forbids it. That's the mechanism. Even though the milk is presumably from the kachal itself. It's like going out and in to the same kachal. So now comes Rabbeinu Tam. And I want to say he's not really arguing on Rashi necessarily. He's just bringing in a case that Rashi didn't talk about. And it's sort of an addendum. It's sort of a conclusion based on Rashi. He's a good.
Can I ask maybe a basic question? So then the Eino Over Alav, by what you were saying, the Eino Over Alav in the Mishnah, I guess we already said this, is like not that it's forbidden. It's not that it's that's not a question of lechatchila diavad. It's like it's still asur to eat it, but you're not okay.
Yeah, there's no
Eino Over Alav means it's forbidden to eat it. But if you did eat it in violation of the law, it would be only a d'Rabbanan, and therefore Eino Over Alav. That's the point. It Eino Over Alav, and it's a d'Rabbanan. You don't get malkut. You're not allowed to eat it. Okay, so Rabbeinu Tam says.
Let's see. Rabbeinu Tam piresh Deah tetzarich kriyat sheti ve'erev v'tachol b'kotel l'ktera. Right, we said that you have to rip it latitudinally, whatever those words are, and you have to like press it against the wall in order to put it in the kedera. Hainu kedera im basar. That means kedera with other meat. I'm going to use the other word other.
With foreign meat. So that's again, we're in the Lishna Patra, we're Rav Nachman, and that seems to be the way we're going, right? And he's saying, but kedera means with other meat.
So, and here's the proof that how do we
the kedera? Yeah, go ahead.
The kedera mashma im basar, and I know that kedera implies that it means with other meat. Why? Kidetnan, right? As we have this Mishnah, im benoten tam bekedera, right?
That's a quote. It's actually, if you look at the correction, it's im yesh ba benoten tam bekedera. That was it. We should remember that Gemara.
It's tipat chalav, right? That was the tipat chalav.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And we said if it gives flavor to the whole kedera, then it's asur. So what's the whole kedera? The other stuff in the kedera. Kedera means not a physical metal object, but it means the food in a physical metal object.
Aval l'kedera below basar, olitzli shari lechachila b'kriya kitzat. All right. So but
Right, right.
if you want
So
to roast it,
he's
sorry,
a
go
little
ahead.
bit different from Rav Nachman. He's saying you
Yeah.
do need a kriya kitzat, and he also saying that sli and an empty pot are identical. That's why I say it's like an addendum. He's just basically saying that an empty pot is identical to sli, whereas Rashi maybe wasn't. Well, Rashi seemed to be talking about an empty pot also. Actually, the truth is, because he said that the milk goes out and in, and he never talked about it going into other meat. He just said it goes out of the thing and then back into the thing. So that could have been an empty pot. So maybe it is a little bit different from Rashi. But anyway, he is saying that the whole problem is when there's other meat there. Go ahead.
All right. I lost my place here. Basar. Let's leave the tama dechmiruba im basar. So why is it a problem if you cook it with other meat? The feet. Tam hachalav nichnas bebasar.
So read the correction here.
I get so small in the version I'm using here. It's
Lefi de tam habasar nichnas bechalav, because the meat, the flavor of the meat goes into the chalav. In other words, the flavor of the other foreign meat goes into the chalav that was exuded from the kachal. So now in the pot you have like
meaty milk,
chalav shchuta, shepiresh, with meat flavor from something else.
Umishtanet tam habasar, right? And then so then it changes, right? So that'd be chama chalav. Is that what it should be?
No, mishneh tam habasar.
And
the
now
other
the
meat
changes the other
meat
basar.
got flavor. Wait a second. Wait a second. It's just the tam habasar nichnas b'chalav, and yes, and then it goes back, and then oh no, and then the basar of the no, I think it's like this. The basar of the kachal now gets that milk and meat that's in the sauce into it. So the meat of the kachal is now mishtaneh. Is mishtaneh because it's changed, because it got this milk and meat, this chalav shapiresh and this basar that was foreign mixed together, and then went into the basar of the udder, and the udder now is asur.
Right now you have meat milk flavor.
Exactly.
All right, and so therefore there's a gezerah,
and that's why there goes there. So this is very interesting, because now we're trying to understand what the rabbis are gozer on. They're gozer on chalav that's piresh that mixed with foreign meat. But what are they not gozer on?
On it by itself, right?
They're not why not? Why should they be gozer on chalav that went out and went back in?
Well, they're either going to explain that in a second. But I think when he says umishtanet tam habasar, he means the other meat, because as opposed to mishtanet tam kechal, right? He means the other meat now has.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Stick with my reading for now.
All right. Right? Even if you didn't rip it, so it's by itself in the pot. Right? As long as you ripped it a little bit, it is mutar lechatchila.
Why?
Ein hachalav be'ena. Right?
That means the amount of milk has been lessened. That's what that means. That's what that means. That means you have lessened the quantity of milk. Okay, that's still not a full enough explanation.
Oh yeah.
Oh, what that Rashi said. Now I really do. Now I change back. I go back and say he really is different from Rashi, because now Rashi said that's already usher, and now he's saying, but no, this is not going to be a problem that it's niflat and choser. Why not?
Lo gazru bo chachamim kivan she'ein sham basar acher velo nishtane tamo shel kachal mipnei bli azo. Right? It tastes the same as it did before. There's no change in flavor.
Right. In other words, yes.
Yeah.
It didn't change.
Exactly.
What does that matter whether it changed or not? What? rabbis only make gezeras when things change. Well, what's his idea?
You're not going to be like, this tastes like milk and meat. This actually kind of goes against Yalta, right? So you're not gonna taste like it's milk and meat. Well, I'll finish it and then be like, oh, I really like the milk and meat flavor. Right?
Go with the Marit Ayin idea. Go with the Marit Ayin idea. Say it
But other
again, but
people are gonna, well,
it
it's not
seems
yeah, it seems like I'm eating milk and meat at that point, right?
in other words, like this. When you're cooking, in other words, kachal is mutter. The Torah says it's mutter. Eating a kachal is mutter. So I cooked the kachal, so it's mutter. Why should it be usher? The rabbi's not going to forbid that. But when you put something else and there's dam that's piresh and then it goes in, people are going to make a mistake. They're going to think, oh, well, there's milk that came out of that kachal and I cook with meat. So I'll go and cook milk and meat together. In other words, when it's just one entity, the entity the Torah permits. Why would the rabbis come and forbid something the Torah permits? But when there's a mixture of entities, so it's already like mixing milk and meat. You're mixing milk of this udder with meat. So that already is something that we have a chashash that people will come to equate with other forms of milk and meat.
Yeah, you have to, like, when he says though, like, right, that lechachil, you need to rip it a little bit, right? And because there's not gonna be as much milk in there, right? De'ena chalav ba'ina od b'kachal kamo she'aya kodem. It must be because it doesn't taste too strongly like milk and meat. It just tastes like a chal, right? I think is his idea there.
Well, I think yeah, maybe. Okay, I would say differently. I would say that there won't be so much milk coming out. If there's a lot of milk coming out, then it really will look like somebody will walk over and see a pot of milk with a piece of meat in it, and they'll say, you're cooking milk and meat. Say, oh no, it's kachal. So it is really marit ayin if you don't do it. That's what I think. I'm sticking with the marit ayin idea.
All right,
and it's not that it's nothing to do with taste. It's to do with because this is what the Gemara says, that the Yalta says that you can have the taste. Anyway, you go on.
But
it seems,
wait, Alish want to say something. Alish, go
yeah,
ahead.
I just want to say that it seems that they go by the taste, right? Because the Tosfot here, they say like really the taste of the actually that's how I read it like Yoreh, it's like the taste of the regular meat is changed, and then you suddenly in the other meat you feel it has some kind of like taste of basar vechalaf, which in the kal you're used to it. Kal is kal. Everybody expects that taste there, but you don't expect it in the other meat which you have in the pot. Like
yeah, but look at it, it says I understand what you're saying, that nishtanei hatam. I'm thinking it's not that we're worried about the taste, that it's nishtanei hatam when flavors change because of milk, then that's similar to milk and meat. It's not because of the flavor particularly. It's not because of we're worried what you're tasting, but it's because that's a sign that you've cooked milk and meat. That's the way I'm reading it, and that's not the word.
But the flavor.
But I agree with you. It does seem to talk about taste, but I'm going away from that.
I think, particularly with the concern for marit ayin, I mean, this is sort of the inverse of marit ayin. This is sort of we're worried about the person's own experience, but it seems less about a conceptualization of what is milk and meat, and more, as Alish said, kachal will always taste a little milky. We actually wouldn't know what kachal tasted without milk, because there's always some sort of thing in it. So when you taste any sort of kachal, you just think that's what kachal tastes like. But if you were to taste the milk and other meat, you would know that you would be experiencing actual milk and meat. I mean, I think there's not enough.
Oh, you wouldn't. There, but you wouldn't. But you would be the rabbanan milk and meat. But you're right. It would be similar.
I mean, Durabanan, it wouldn't count as milk and meat, but actually in terms of the literal substances, you would be tasting the taste of milk with meat.
But what's the difference if I eat kachal as milk and meat and I eat other meat as milk and meat? Either way, it tastes the same. Maybe it tastes exactly the same.
Because kachal, as Alish said, I never can eat kachal without sort of a hint of milk. So it's baked. It's like sort of necessarily part of the taste.
But look, read on a few more words. I still think I'm right. Yeah. But go ahead. Right, and we're worried about that people will come to eat milk and meat. I don't think they come to eat it because they enjoy the taste. I think they come to eat it because they get confused. They think if this is mutter, then that is also mutter. If I can do this, then I can do that. If I can cook this milky thing called a kachal with meat, then I can cook milk itself with meat. It's because it's two different substances. But when it's one substance, then that they'll say, oh, that's just cooking kachal. So they won't think that that's a problem. We're interested in what people will get confused about.
And that backs up with the rest of the Gemara, this masa of Rav, where he seems to think
Exactly.
there's a possibility that if he's at the least bit makel on chal, then people won't be able to hold the line, and they'll go back to their basu b'chalav eating.
Right. If you read all the Gemaras that I told you to read, we won't read it today, but I'll just mention it. He went and he saw these two women talking about recipes, and they're saying, how much milk should I cook with my meat? And he's like, well, people, Yalta, apparently Yalta has had a bad influence on the other women, and they're all eating milk and meat now. And he says, this is terrible, and he forbids kachal. So, right, that's in the back of our minds is people getting confused. See, that's so Bebeinu Tam is not coming out of left field. He makes a lot of sense. We're worried about what people will mix up together. Oh, we're really out of time here. So let's stop with that Tosfot. I will just give you a couple highlights. Let's go to the Gemara. I mean, not the Gemara. The Shulchan Aruch. Actually, is there? Let me just quickly look at the Shulchan Aruch myself. Yeah, let's look at the Shulchan Aruch. Let's just go to the Shulchan Aruch. I'll read a little bit because maybe it'll go faster that way, but I won't go too fast because if I go too fast, fasta meruba lo tafasta. But let's look at the kachal. So first of all, the first shach says that the first part of the Shulchan Aruch, the first sif, is a quote of the Rambam. And I didn't believe him, so I checked, and he's right. It's exactly the lashon of the Rambam, except for like one word he changes, but not significant. So this is just quoting the Rambam. Exactly. Two halachas in the Rambam. Kachal asur medivrei sofrim. Kachal is forbidden rabbinically. She'ein basar shenit bashel b'chalav shchuta asur min haTorah. Because even if you would squeeze out milk from a dead animal and cook meat in it, it wouldn't be asur from the Torah. Lefichach im karo umerech chalav shebo. If you ripped it and took out the chalav, muter litzloto v'lochlo. If you removed the chalav, it would be muter to roast it and eat it. V'im karo sheti, and if you did a proper V'im karosheti ve'erev v'tachol b'kotel ad shelo nisharu bo lachluchit chalav muter levashlo im habasar. Then you could actually cook it with basar. So he has this. It's kind of like Rav Nachman, right? Isn't that Rav Nachman? In other words, well, Rav Nachman.
Rav Nachman says you don't have to even do kriya on the.
You don't do kriya at all.
Tzliya.
Right. It's like it's like Rabbeinu Tam, yeah. It's similar to Rabbeinu Tam a little bit, except we didn't talk about empty pots. But he's saying you have to do a little bit of a kriya. Did anybody say you have to do a little bit of a kriya? Who was it? It was somebody in the Gemara who said do a little kriya. He says, Rabbi Elazar. It's really like Rabbi Elazar. Kar'ali va'echli. Cut it and I'll eat it.
Wait, but he says Devrahim koro umerek hachalav shabo. That seems more stringent. No?
I think it's less than sheti. Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. But it's not tacho b'kotel. He's saying he sort of he invented a kind of some other thing that gets the milk out than pressing against the wall.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's similar to Rabbi Elazar, the idea of doing a lesser amount for tzli and a greater amount for cooking. Okay. Mutar l'bashal ima basar. Kachal V'kachal shelo karo bein shel tana, bein shel shelo inika, bein shel gedola asur levashlo. You can't. Ve'im avar bashlo b'fnei atzmo. Oh, that's Rabbeinu Tam now. Not that he read Rabbeinu Tam, but he's in the same school of thought. Im bashlo, b'fnei atzmo, muter lo'ochlo. So he's saying like this: you have to do some kind of kriya for tzli, but if you didn't, b'di'evid, Rav Nachman is, we're going like the b'di'evid is mutter, right? It's kind of like the Lishna Kama, the way I was explaining it. The Lishna Kama is talking about tzli and saying you should do a kriya. Actually, that's what he's doing. Now that I think about it, the Rambam is going like the Lishna Kama and saying it's tzli. And what did the Lishna Kama in the Mishnah say? It said, Eno over alav umutter, right? Eno over alav umutter, but what he's talking about tzli. But bishul is asur, right? So it's like the Lishna Kama, actually, the way I explained it, that it's talking about tzli. Ve'im bashlo im basar acher, misharin oto b'shishim v'kachal min haminyan. And we measured against 60, and the kachal counts towards the 60. And that was the Gemara that I told you to read on Sadi Zayin, which said that kachal is in shishim, and it's kachal min haminyan. And that would say it's asur. So he's saying the kachal min haminyan. Ketzad im akol im hakachal kemo shishim v'kachal hakachal asur. If vashar mutar. If you did have shishim, then the kachal is forbidden, but the rest of the mixture is mutar because you had 60. V'im haya pachot b'shishim akol asur. But the kachal is always going to be asur because the kachal has that foreign meat in it. That foreign meat flavor came in with milk, came into it, and it's asur. And that we learned from the Gemara in Sadi Zayin, which we didn't see today, but which I assigned. Uben kach im nafal lekedera acheret oser oto umisharin bo b'shishim kiberishona. But when this thing is asur and it falls into some other pot, a secondary pot, we measure it b'shishim kiberishona. What does that mean?
It means it counts for the shishim again.
So in other words, in 59.
Yeah.
So look at Dalid. Misharin bo b'shishim kiberishona. So Dalid in the Taz. He says, Mashma afilu im nafal techila b'pachot mishishim, which would make it really asur, right? Everything is asur now. The whole pot is forbidden. Have kibetchila litzaref gama kachal. Then the kachal could join in, even though what would be the din of the other pieces? In other words, the kachal fell into like 40 amounts against it. So it's all asur. What would the din of the other pieces be? Would they also count against, would they also be mina minyan or not?
You mean if they all fell also into this other kedera?
Yeah, let's say you had 40 other pieces, and one of the other pieces, not the original kachal, now fell into another pot. Would it also be mina minyan? Maybe yes. Maybe yes. Or maybe yes, because what's the difference between the kachal and the other ones? The kachal is like in a pot of 40 pieces, and they're all asur to the same degree. Why should the other ones be more asur than the kachal? Well, let's go on.
Because it's
Let's go on.
I think this goes back to the question of when we're measuring against the kachal, even though we're measuring against kachal atzmo and not ma'id nafak minay. There is a possibility that in that first falling in, it excreted all of the milk in it, and now it is not going back to it.
But in that case, it's if anything, it's worse than the other pieces. It's not
The
less
reason
of
it
a
would be
problem.
the reason it would be
Why would
better
it-
is from the idea that like somehow the milk is not milk for its own kachal meat. That's not a milk meat mixture. It's the milk
Yeah,
meat
okay.
flavor with it's the milk getting the meat flavor from the other meat that
I
went back into
understand,
the
I understand,
kachal
but
then,
it's
yeah.
quite far to go in such a direction. But yeah,
Well, the debate has dealt with this, right? Why a cacao would be less machmir than
I mean,
any of the
the
third pieces of the vegetable substitution. There are a couple of options.
the Ra'ah does say it exactly as you said, that if another piece from that mixture fell in, it would also count.
right, yes. So I'm just giving you a certain logic. Anyway, have kibetachila tzaref gam hakachal, became katav b'sefer bedek habayit l'ra. The kol hane'asar, here's exactly what I'm about to say, what I was just about to say. The kol hane'asar me'oto kachal have a din hachi. It has the same din as the kachal, that it counts it towards the minyan. Umitzaref, because because wait a second, let's take a step back. Why should there be this crazy din? Because it's a d'Rabbanan. Because the chalav is not really, it's not really chalav. It's really just chalav d'Rabbanan. And so where can we make it? We can say it counts towards the minyan. Achar kach, the shishi. Lo ye sofo chamur b'tchilato. Because it can't get any worse than it started out being. It started out being a kachal that was, aser. It can't be more than what it was. And when it originally was, if anything, less flavor is here. And yet we wouldn't make it more strict than when in a case when there's less flavor here. V'hayesh omrim shel harama shehu harashba sfira le dekol de nafla b'pachot mishishim naaseh gam haheter hatichat nevela, that everything became nevela. The ha'asu rabbanan kebasar b'chalav. So in order to say different from the Ra'ah, you have to say that there's like another gezerah, that once you have basar b'chalav midrabanan, there's chanan there, and it becomes 100% asur. And then then you have to say that the kachal itself would now become 100% asur and not be min haminyan. Right? The asu, I'm jumping on the word asuhu. The rabbis made it there asu rabbanan kebasar b'chalav, as kebasar b'chalav. Ubasar b'chalav the divrei hakol naseh nevela. So that would be chanan. In other words, they called it in that category. Al kain sarich achar kach shishim neged hakachal. Now you're going to need 60. The first time you needed 59. The second time you need 60. It got worse. Kind of crazy din. And if you let's look, since I sort of promised, to look at the Chidushei Rabbi Akiva Eger. Bet. It's on this Taz. It's like the first Rabbi Akiva Eger, but not the first line, the second section. Mashma afilu im nafal techila b'pachot b'shishim v'chulei l'tzaref gama chachal. What is l'tzaref gama chachal? Right, that you could l'tzaref gama chachal every time, like the Ra'ah said. Kach he'elah. This is for Joel, actually. This little piece is for Joel, because Joel and I have been discussing for 4 or 5 years a certain halacha, and which is what is the din of basar b'chalav chanan according to the mechaber in the second step, right? In the second step, the first step, it becomes chanan when milk and meat join. But what about if you took milk and meat that joined and now mixed that with some other thing? Do we say chanan there or not? So according to the Ramah, for sure, because we say in Shari Surik. But what about the mechaber who holds only in basar b'chalav? Is he only that initial mifgash, that initial contact, or also all subsequent contacts? So the b'dat hamechaber the be'isur d'Rabbanan lo amrina chatichana se nevela. comes out that the Mechaber holds that if it's Issa D'Rabbanan, we don't say Chatikatan to say Nevela, because that's he's quoting the Rambam. Presumably he agrees with the Rambam, and the Rambam is saying that we still count it as 59 and in 59 and not in 60. So you must say we don't say Chanan. Why don't you say Chanan? Because it's Issa D'Rabbanan. So now we're making a klal. There's a general klal that Issa D'Rabbanan lo amrinan Chatikatan to say Nevela. Mishum.
Isn't he quoting that? Isn't he paraphrasing what he thinks the Taz's position is?
Maybe it doesn't.
Because he's then going to give his own interpretation of what the machloket is about.
Well, let's go on. I'm just explaining the words. Whether it's, I don't think it doesn't really matter. Maybe you're right. I don't think I contradict what I'm saying. Lo amrina hatichat naseh nevela. I guess we're time is up, but I'm going to go a little bit over, I guess, because I just want to finish this thing. I won't be offended if anyone wants to leave. But Joel, except for Joel. Okay. Naseh nevela mishum haki gam kishenafla lekadera acheret hakachal min haminyan, because we didn't have Chanan here because it was asur only D'Rabbanan. This is a mistake. V'lahaga, he means the Ramah, but lahaga you can call him lahaga. V'lahaga to the Ramah shematzrik shishim below kachal mishum desavar dekol isur D'Rabbanan amrinan hatikana senevela. So that's a machloket between the Ramah and the Mechaber, whether you say Chanan in other words, the Mechaber, not only does the Ramah say you say Chanan in Shar Isurim, he also says you say Chanan in Isur D'Rabbanan. In Isur D'Rabbanan. V'lanias daiti Yoreh d'lo muchach midi. This is not true. We have no proof. You're right. This is basically what the Taz was saying. But he's saying this way of thinking is wrong. Lo muchach midi mea Mechaber. You can't prove that that's what the Mechaber holds, that there's no such thing as Chanan. Yesh lomar the Mechaber v'Ramah l'taimayu azli, that they go like their reasoning, like their different opinions. V'hu b'mad pligi od b'hai data Mechaber Rambam. The bishul kedera l'chudei b'diavad af below kra shari, but that the Ramah, in other words, that the Mechaber holds like the Rambam, that when you're cooking it alone in a pot, even without doing kriya, it's like sli, and therefore it's mutter. B'diavad, but that the Ramah le'esor ba'ofen huddatam, and he says forbidden. The Ramah says forbidden. Mivu'ar b'rishonim dat haMechaber debliat basar hakachal michalbo o chalbo mibasar hakachal lo asru mishum basar b'chalav rak b'bishul im basar acher, because the Mechaber holds that you only get an isser when there's foreign meat there. And that's why it's permitted in a pot alone. Im basar acher chalbo bolei tam, like the tos, like Rabbeinu Tam. Bolei tam mi basar acher v'dat Ramah davka kol zman shelo piresh chalbo lo asru aval b'piresh, which is any time you cook, right? As long as it didn't come out, like roasting, for example, then it's not asur. But when it came out, even by itself, even if there's no other meat there, aval b'piresh hachalav harehi kechalav da'alma, it's like regular chalav. Umishum hachi b'bishulo af below basar asur hakachal me'achalav sheyatsa mimenu. From its own chalav, it can become asur because of basar b'chalav. Yeah, is everybody with me? Am I saying good? Yeah, it's clear? Okay. So we're just saying, so far I didn't quite get the answer of why of why this explains the machloket, but he is explaining another machloket, which is in the Mechaber and the Ramah, which is why when you cook it by yourself, when you cook meat by itself, the Mechaber says it's mutter, and the Ramah says it's asur, and that's because the Ramah says that its own milk is also going to create milk and meat, and it's going to be asur. The Yatzar meant the im ken nira de l'shitata Mechaber de lo asru b'liat basar hakachal mechal bo from its own milk. That's not forbidden. Im ken im bishal im basar acher. But if you would cook it with other milk, after leka shishim, even if there isn't 60 there, ubalach al bo mibasar acher. And now the milk that went out of the chalav mixed with this other meat, and it became basar b'chalav out there in the pot, not in the udder, but in the pot. The meat, the other foreign meat, mixed with the milk from the udder, and that became basar b'chalav, and that's basar b'chalav. But that's basar b'chalav. Ne'asar chalav mishum basar b'chalav. So that chalav became asar. Aval mikol makom mashibolea achar kach habasar hakachal. But when the kachal now reabsorbs that, michalbo eina isur mishum shehu basar mishum shehu basar bolea michalbo. You can't say it's asur because if it's reabsorbing its own milk, which would mean it's basar b'chala. Elahu kamo yerek. It's really like a vegetable in the pot that's just absorbing milk and meat coming into it. Shebolea mechatichot basar b'chalav. That's bolea from this already mixed together basar b'chalav. Ubazelo amrina chatichana senevela. And that's just like a shar isurim. When it's already happened, there was already the mifkash, there was already the encounter between milk and meat and the pot, and now it comes back into the chalav. That's like, we have to treat that as though it's shar isurim. The ikar time da amrina basar b'chalav chatichana senevela hu rak mishum the lechude shari. That the highlight, because the whole reason that we say that there's chanan b'basar b'chalav is because each one is permitted, and now they come together and they become forbidden. But in this case, it's already forbidden, and so therefore it's like shar isurim, and therefore that's why the chachal doesn't become chanan, because it's ein chanan b'shar isurim. Masha ein came b'masha boleh mechatichot basar b'chalav ahavik boleh mishar isurim. The lo amrinu l'tichana say nevela aval data Ramah. But the Ramah says there is chanan b'shar isurim. La'achar shepiresh hu kechalav the alma v'havik achshav basar b'chalav. Now it's basar b'chalav atzmo. V'amrina hatichana say nevela because of shar isurim. V'hu barur aduk. It's perfect. It makes perfect sense. It's shar isurim, and that's why it is chanan for the Ramah, and it's not chanan for the. So this proves that. At least the Rabbi Akiva Eger understands that according to the Mechaber, there is no chanan there after the first encounter between milk and meat. But go on another little bit, and you'll see that he admits he's wrong. Ve'adonenu morenu v'rabenu harav hagaon mori. V'Rabbi Harav, he really gives him a lot of kavod. Harav Wolf Eger. I don't know who this is. His father, his uncle. I don't know who this is exactly. I tried to look it up. I don't know who this is. If anybody finds out, but maybe it's his uncle. But he calls him his Morenu, Rabbeinu, Harav. Heshivli Shahadin Imi. That Besfara. That what you're saying makes a lot of sense. The din is with you, Besfara. Ulam, however, Efshar, it's impossible to say what you're saying. L'kaven kain, I don't know exactly. You can't say such a thing. Efshar l'kaven kain b'dat mechaber. But you can't say that about the mechaber. What you just said is not an explanation of the mechaber. Why? Shedato b'Beit Yosef, Siman Kuf Gimel. Because in other places in the Beit Yosef, even things that have absorbed basar b'chalav, amrina hatichana say nevela, secondary, tertiary, revi'i, his uncle. Yeah, okay, thank you, Yavni. According to Wikipedia, I looked up on Wikipedia, I didn't see it. But okay, thank you. I guess it's his uncle because he wouldn't say it about his father. He would have said Mori. He would say Mori Avi. So anyway, it's there in Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Okay. So anyway, it's his uncle. That was my guess. So he says the din is with you logically, but there are many other places in Beit Yosef and in the Mechaber where he says that once there was the mifgash and it's basar b'chalav, it actually still can make another one and another one and another one for infinitum, ad infinitum, each new encounter. V'hodeiti lo shahaya behelem, and I thanked him because I had forgotten this. Behelem davar mimeni. Divrei Beit Yosef, Ra'iti Shach, Sof Siman, Kuf Kaf, Kuf Gimel. Anyway, I should tell you, you should take encouragement from this Beit Yosef, from this Rabbi Akiva Eiger. If Rabbi Akiva Eiger can forget that the din, according to the Mechaber, is actually this weird din, and get caught up in what logic tells him, then we can also sometimes forget a halach. But
Nachum, I don't want to keep us any later, but I do think it's worth spending 30 extra seconds to read what he says about the Shach, because it is a funny.
Sorry, I closed my book.
I can read. I'm happy to read it.
Read it. I'll listen.
Reiti b'Shach, etc. Shecholek be'emet al Beit Yosef b'misvar shekatavti. Teshuv lo shayach ha'lechudeshai. So he actually, since the Beit Yosef holds with Rabbeinu Ephraim, which says that Basar B'chalav is only Aser, only Chanan because both are permitted, it actually no longer makes sense to say that the mixture Basar B'chalav can cause Chanan because it's Aser. So you no longer have this the condition of they're both mutar together, therefore there's Chanan.
I understand. No, the logic. Yeah, go ahead. You want to read more?
V'samachti shekivanti b'svar.
Yeah, this
and
Rabbi Akiva Eiger is right in Svara.
Happy that I
Yeah, he's right in Svara. He's thought the same way as the Shach, but it doesn't matter because the Beit Yosef holds differently. The point is his uncle was correct. You thought correctly, but that's not the way the Beit Yosef holds. The Beit Yosef holds,
but it is the way the Beit Yosef should hold.
It's the way the Beit Yosef should hold. But it's not the way he does hold. And I explained it in another shir why the Beit Yosef holds the way he does. But yeah, Joel.
I mean, I didn't read this whole of Rabbi Akiva Eiger, but you can make a chiluk. I didn't look at the Beit Yosef there either, but between whether or not it's basar b'chalav de Rabbanan or de Oraita, where he says that that Hanan keeps going on ad infinitum in de Oraita potentially, and not in a de Rabbanan case. You could make that. I don't know. I need to look at the Beit Yosef there, what he says, what the case is, but.
Mm-hmm. No, but I think that there's a better explanation. I think that Taz, or I think it's the Taz or the Taz, I think says that there's another explanation. It's not nothing to do with Hanan. The reason why he's Mekel is because of what the Ra'ah said. It shouldn't be more strict than the other. And even if we hold Hanan, we wouldn't hold it here. And that just goes back to what I was going to say. Why? You see what I'm saying? We wouldn't hold it here because we're not going to make things more strict than they started out. And that's a different svara. Not because of Hanan, not because of technicalities. So the Ra'ah is right. The Ra'ah, he's really holding like the Ra'ah. The Beit Yosef is holding like the Ra'ah. But what is the explanation of why the Beit Yosef holds this weird din? Because it's the Rabbanan. Like he's basically saying it's not Iker Hadin. He's just saying, in other words, the Hanan by Basar B'chalav is Iker Hadin. The secondary, the tertiary, the ad infinitum is a din de Rabbanan. The other one is din de Raita. That's the way you have to explain it. We didn't read the rest of the tour of the Shulchan Aruch. I'll just say one word, which is that what we just said was the Iker Hadin. The rest of the Shulchan Aruch is giving the minhag, and the minhag is much more strict. And the minhag is probably more strict because of the Gemara that we saw, that we didn't see, that we mentioned, that the women sometimes cook milk and meat together because of kacha. But anyway, they're arguing about the minhag. The Rambam is just being quoted as the Iker Hadin. And both the Ramah and the Mechaber are more strict as in their final psak. Okay, Yishur Kayach. I hope this was a interesting shir. We learned something. We saw something.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next week is Joel, right?
His sources will probably come out tomorrow, and we will learn about